When swallowed by toads, bombardier beetles project hot, noxious chemicals from their anuses, which sometimes forces the predators to puke them back up.
Grim.
To the brim.
Grim to the brim. Grim to the brim.
Brim to the brim.
Grim.
Brim to the brim. Grim.
Grim to the brim.
Brim to the brim. Grim to the brim.
Grim to the brim.
It's grim. Brim to the brim. Still grim.
Grim to the brim.
Brim to the brim.
Grim to the brim.
Grim. Brim to the brim.
Grim to the brim.
Grim.
All right, Nova, give us an amazing intro.
Hello and good evening and welcome to the Grim to the Brim podcast. I am Novadoam and I'm here with my three co-hosts, starting with...
Davemustardface.
And...
Bananananks.
And finally...
Katepaintpots.
I'm very happy to have you all with us tonight. Grim to the Brim is a podcast where we talk about the Grimm's fairy tales and absolutely shit on them with bad voice acting. Tonight's story will be The Little Red Riding Hood. Take us away, Nova. Of course, Nova. I'll do it gladly. Once upon a time...
What a pro.
Once upon a time, there was a sweet little girl. Everyone who saw her liked her, but most of all her grandmother, who did not know what to give the child next. What? Did I read that wrong?
I don't even know what to give the child next.
That sounded so weird to me. Something about the way I said it doesn't sound right to me. All right, let's try this again. This is a great start. Once upon a time, there was a sweet little girl. Everyone who saw her liked her, but most of all her grandmother, who did not know what to give the child next. Once she gave her a little cap made of red velvet, because it suited her so well, and she wanted to wear it all the time. She came to be known as Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother said to her,
Come, Little Red Riding Hood. Here's a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother. She is sick and weak, and they will do her well. Mind your manners and give her my greetings. Behave yourself on the way and do not leave the path, or you might fall down and break the glass, and then there'll be nothing for your sick grandmother.
That wine would be drunk if that was me. If she was in Sunderland, just saying.
You would down the bottle in front of her.
Yeah, and the cake. Cake and all.
Nice.
Little Red Riding Hood promised to obey her mother. Obey! The grandmother lived out in the woods, a half hour from the village. When Little Red Riding Hood entered the woods, a wolf came up to her. She did not know what a wicked animal he was, and was not afraid of him.
Good day to you, Little Red Riding Hood.
Thank you, Wolf.
Worst kind of wolf, a Geordie one.
Where are you going so early, Little Red Riding Hood?
To grandmother's.
And what are you carrying under your apron?
Grandmother's sick and weak. And I'm taking her some cake and wine. We baked yesterday, and they should give her strength.
Little Red Riding Hood, just where does your grandmother live?
Her house is a good quarter hour from here in the woods, under the 3 large oak trees. And there's a hedge of hazel bushes there. You must know the place.
Must know the place. Is Grandma very popular?
Well, she's a bit of a swinger.
All right, said Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf thought to himself.
Now there's a tasty bait for me. Just how you going to catch her?
Then he said,
Listen, Little Red Riding Hood. I got a bit of a sore throat, Pat. Haven't you seen the beautiful flowers that are blossoming in the woods? Why don't you go and take a look? And I don't believe you can hear how beautifully the birds are singing. You are walking along as though you were on your way to school in the village. It is a very beautiful in the woods.
It's a very beautiful in the woods.
Little Red Riding Hood opened her eyes and saw the sunlight breaking through the trees, and how the ground was covered with beautiful flowers. She thought,
If I take a bouquet to grandmother, she'll be very pleased. Anyway, it's still early and I'll be home on time.
and she ran off into the woods looking for flowers. Each time she picked one, she thought that she would see an even more beautiful one a little way off, and she ran after it, going further and further into the woods. But the wolf ran straight to grandmother's house and knocked on the door.
Who's there?
Little Red Riding Hood, and I'm bringing you some cake and wine. Open the door for me. Sounds just like
Convincing.
it.
If Granny falls
In
for
the
that.
girl's voice.
Yeah, very convincing. Oh, is that my sweet granddaughter? Oh, just press the latch, called out the grandmother. I'm too weak to get up. That was... I'm talking to myself. The wolf pressed... The wolf pressed the latch and the door opened. He stepped inside, went straight to the grandmother's bed and ate her up. Then he took her clothes, put them on, and put her cap on his head. He got into a bed and pulled the curtains shut. Little Red Riding Hood had run after flowers and did not continue on her way to grandmother's until she had gathered all that she could carry. When she arrived, she found, to her surprise, that the door was open. She walked into the parlor and everything looked so strange and she thought, geez, that's a lot of dog shit on the floor anyways.
What's that old lady's corpse on the floor? It's just a leg on the floor. What's that?
Oh no, Granny's been disarmed.
Oh.
Oh my god, why am I so afraid? I usually like it at grandmother's.
Then she went to the bed and pulled back the curtains. Grandmother was lying there with her cap pulled down over her face and looking very strange.
Grandmother, what big ears you have?
All the better to eat you with.
No.
Here, she said he is.
What?
Fucking hell, Granny.
No, we were fine.
All the better to... Oh, Christ. Hold on a minute. Let me pull myself together. Oh, I feel a bit rough today. I meant to say all the better to hear you with, pet.
Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have.
Way, all the better to see you with.
Grandmother, you've got big chonging hands.
Way, all the better to grab you with.
Grandmother, what a horribly big mouth you have.
All the better to eat you with.
Excuse me?
When
I said,
What'd you
I
say?
said all the better to eat you with. I was trying not to alarm you.
And with that, he jumped out of bed, jumped on top of poor Little Red Riding Hood, and ate her up. As soon as the wolf had finished his tasty bite, he climbed back into bed, fell asleep, and began to snore very loudly. A huntsman was just passing by. He thought it strange that the old woman was snoring so loudly, so he decided to take a look. He stepped inside, and in the bed there lay the wolf that he had been hunting for such a long time.
He has eaten the grandmother, but perhaps she can still be saved. I won't shoot him.
I'll stab him, specifically, in the stomach, thought the huntsman. So he took a pair of scissors and cut open his belly. He had cut only a few strokes when he saw the red cap shining through. I think that's blood,
The wolf's
mate.
still asleep at this
The wolf's
point.
just sleeping through this.
So the wolf's just lying there in its like food coma, just like, oh, you know what? Just cut me open, lads.
He cut a little more, and the girl jumped out and cried.
My precious Bowery! I was so frightened. It was so dark inside that wolf's body.
And then the grandmother came out alive as well. Then Little Red Riding Hood fetched some large, heavy stones. They filled the wolf's body with them, and when he woke up and tried to run away, the stones were so heavy that he fell down dead. The three of them were happy. The huntsman took the...
Because cutting him open and leaving his belly gaping wide wasn't going to kill him, so we need to put some stones in his belly first.
The huntsman took the wolf's pelt. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine that Little Red Riding Hood had brought. And Little Red Riding Hood thought to herself,
As long as I live, I'll never leave the path and run onto the woods by myself. If Mother tells me not to. Also, I don't want to fall over and die.
They also tell how Little Red Riding Hood was taking some baked things to her grandmother another time, when another wolf spoke to her and wanted her to leave the path. But Little Red Riding Hood took care and went straight to grandmother's. She told her that she had seen the wolf, and that he had wished her a good day, but had stared at her in a wicked manner.
If we hadn't have been on a public road, he would have eaten me up.
She said, Let's lock the door so he can't get in. Soon afterward, the wolf knocked on the door and called out,
Open up, grandmother. It's Little Red Riding Hood, and I'm bringing you some baked things.
If Grandma's fallen for this not once but twice, you know, like, I think she deserves to be eaten at this point. Because, Jesus.
He wanted to wait until Little Red Riding Hood went home that evening, then follow her and eat her up in the darkness. But the grandmother saw what he was up to. There was a large stone trough in front of the house. "Fetch a bucket, Little Red Riding Hood," she said. "Yesterday I cooked some sausage. Carry the water that I boiled them with to the trough." Little Red Riding Hood carried water until the large trough was clear full. Clear full. Clear full.
Make sure it's clear full, mind.
Full.
That's a phrase people use, kid. It means full, but we don't just say full.
It's clear full. It's quite clearly
This is full, but it's not clear full.
Yeah.
So we'll have to mark you down.
I humbly apologize. All right, let's try that again. Little Red Riding Hood carried water until the large trough was clear full. The smell of sausage arose into the wolf's nose. He sniffed and looked down, stretching his neck so long that he could no longer hold himself, and he began to slide. He slid off the roof, fell into the trough, and drowned. And Little Red Riding Hood returned home happily and safely.
Shit are these wolves?
That's a happy ending.
He fell off the roof and drowned in a trough. In a trough.
A trough of sausage water.
You can drown in 3 inches of water.
Clearly.
If it's clear full, it's clear full. What a story.
I'm just questioning, why did the wolf, right, go through this whole ploy to pretend that he was the freaking grandma when he just ate the grandma anyway. He could have just, like, the moment Little Red Riding Hood went in, he could have just eaten her. He didn't need to dress up and, like, drag, did he? Because he's
not
just
that
fabulous
smart.
and he was just like, you know what, Granny's got some rocking threads, I want them on me.
Anyway, so what's up next? We've got some sort of Breal, I think.
Frequently.
It's been called the Breal of a lifetime. I don't know who said it, but I heard someone in the street shouting about it, and I shut the window because they were disrupting the podcast. But they were certainly saying it's the Breal of a lifetime. It's the Breal of the lifetime. The Breal of the lifetime. Let's just explain what it is, what a Breal is, because people don't listen to the podcast. So when they listen to the podcast, they need to be reminded what it is. A Breal is a word we use. I don't know why we use it. Kate, could you explain why we use the word Breal and what it means, what this is?
Yeah, you invented it because it rhymed with real.
So real and Breal.
Yeah, it was literally grim to the brim and real to the Breal.
So, real to the Breal, or a Breal, as people are saying in New York these days, is this story based on a true life event that's been twisted and made into some kind of Grimm's fairy tale. Is that what it is? Some sort of real life event twisted into a Grimm's fairy tale. Is that right, Kate?
Yes.
Well, I can't wait to hear it. Let's hear it.
My Breal is called The Seamstress and the Sausages. There was once a seamstress who had much misfortune in her life. She was aging and still had yet to find love. She had no husband, nor any children, and became lonely, and in her grief, her sewing and garments turned to an awful quality, and no one would buy from her. She found herself penniless and with nowhere to go, and took to begging on the streets for coin and scraps of food. One day, when the rain was pouring and the skies were dark with thunderclouds, she sought cover in a sheltered doorway of a nearby home, and sat, shivering, waiting for the storm to pass. She was so miserable, and thought, "What has become of my life? Why is God punishing me so? I have been a pious and good woman, and yet I find myself in much sorrow." No sooner had the thought left her head, the door behind her opened, and a tall and handsome man looked down upon her with concerned eyes. "Madam, what a sight you make for sure! Do come inside and warm yourself by my fire. I will fetch a cup of mulled ale and we shall talk." The seamstress was overwhelmed by his kindness, and tears formed in her eyes as she was led through the small but well-kept house. She perched on a stool by the roaring fire and accepted his mulled ale with a thankful smile. He asked of her sorrow, and she began to tell him how the tide had always turned against her in life, and the situation she now found herself in was dire. The man was much aggrieved and had taken so kindly to her that he asked if she wouldn't care to live in the little house with him and help him by cooking and cleaning. She accepted, and presently they found themselves living happily in their little home together. A year passed, and the seamstress and the handsome man found themselves very much in love, and he proposed marriage to her, which she readily accepted. In due course, she found herself with child, and was overjoyed at the happy turn in her life. She began selling garments again, and her cheer was such that the clothes were beautiful beyond belief, and it wasn't long before the king and queen themselves were requesting their cloth of gold robes be sewn by her own hand. 9 months passed, and the woman knew that the baby would soon arrive. One day she felt such pains that she feared she was dying, but her husband had called for a midwife who arrived and ensured her the child would be delivered safely and soon. The midwife instructed the woman in the ways of labour, and it was not long before the small sound of the newborn's cries were ringing throughout the house. The woman breathed a sigh of relief and went to stand, but the midwife stopped her and said, "Be still, woman! There is but another child on its way." The seamstress was concerned, as she had not made allowance for twins, but still she lay back, and there came forth another child. She had not completed her final labour breath before the midwife, in shock, cried, "What is this? There is yet another child. It is joined to the last." And the seamstress was horrified. 2 children she could care for, but 3 she had not the coin for. However, this was not the end. The babies kept coming. Dozens of them, all strung together like sausages. The midwife was pulling at the human thread, feeding it relentlessly behind her with a look of horror on her face as the baby pile behind her grew taller and taller. Finally, the seamstress, now utterly exhausted from the labour, breathed a sigh of relief as she felt no other child inside her belly. She sat up and glanced briefly at the midwife, who had fainted, and looked round to the mound of newborns behind her, all crying for feed. Her husband hurried through the front door, late to the delivery, and stood, mouth agape, trying to make sense of the image in front of him. The seamstress's maternal instincts had now set in, and she had begun to feed each child at her breast with a worried look upon her face. Her husband, mouth still open, not knowing what to say, just looked at her. "I know what you're thinking," said the woman. "What on earth are we going to call them all? It took us half the year to agree upon one name." The end.
We can live in the assumption that these children grew up still joined as sausages.
I mean, I don't know. Possibly.
No, we'll never know.
They work on a factory line. It's the only job they could all get. In a sausage factory.
So obviously it didn't really happen. No, I didn't really have sausage babies, but I did have a dream, or a nightmare, I suppose, where I was pregnant. I had this huge belly, and when I gave birth, the babies just kept coming, and they were all joined together like sausages. And
I've heard this, yeah.
I wasn't bothered by the fact that A, they were all joined together like sausages, or B, the fact that there was just dozens and dozens of them. It just didn't seem to stop. My first and foremost thought was, it took me so long to think of one name. What the fuck am I going to call all these kids?
Not the fact that you had sausage babies.
And I woke up.
Wow.
No. That didn't, in my dream, that didn't even faze me. What fazed me was the fact I just couldn't think of that many names. And that I knew that some of those...
Were they baby size? Or sausage size?
No, they were baby size. They were full baby size. But I was just like... I like felt really bad because I knew I had this realization in my dream that some of these babies would be growing up with really shit
Michael,
names.
Michael, and Tricle. Come on, there's 3 straight off the
Because I
bat.
just run out of ideas. Like eventually I'll start calling them like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it's not a good environment for a child.
No,
to grow
you could
up in,
use
I
all
don't
the
think.
names of like sausage types, like Cumberland. You could. Wait, I can only think of
Processed.
one. Bratwurst. There you are.
Yeah, because them kids aren't going to get shut in the lockers at school.
I mean,
and have
they're
their heads flushed
sausage
down
babies.
toilets.
Of course, they're gonna get
Breakfast
bullied.
sausage.
Oi, walls!
One can be called boerewors.
They're literally attached at their head and feet. They're not gonna get bullied,
But the most regal of their siblings is Richmond.
Oh.
He's the king. So yeah.
Can't even think of that many sausage names, Kate. You know what? It is a problem. I see your problem.
See? I know, right? It was horrific, and it put me off having kids, just in case it ever really happens. You just never know.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to pick out 12 names if you're going to even consider getting pregnant, just in case this happens, you know?
But there was more than 12 in my dream.
Well, let's say
David.
20 names, Kate. Well, I mean, what do you need? 50 names? I can pick you 50 names. You want to think of 50 names right now?
I don't think you should be allowed to pick
We've got
babies'
David,
names.
Bavid, Wavid, Gravid, Shavid, Lavid, Weavid.
Shave it.
Shavid, get over here now and stop working
Did you
your
say
ticket.
Shavid or Chavid? Because we're two different people, you know.
Chafe
There's
it.
Javid, Chafid, Shavid, Shavid, and Wavid.
Ravid?
Ravid!
This
What?
is why me
What?
and David
What?
will
No,
never have
Ravid, not
children.
Wavid. Yeah, it would be a problem.
Technically, one could be called COVID.
COVID.
Can I just remind you, this is the same person that wanted to call our dog Snakes.
What made you decide on that? Why snakes?
Why Snakes,
Snakes. I don't know. It just seemed like a.
From Home Alone.
Yeah, I don't know. No snakes. That was purely the inspiration.
David? That one throwaway line from Home Alone.
never happened.
Oh, my
Hey, it wasn't a
God.
throwaway line.
No, it was a big line. Merlin's like being called Merlin about 10% of the time these last few years. He gets called Pumba a lot of the time now.
He does. He answers to it now.
Pumba.
But most of the time. In fact, he responds more to that than Merlin now.
That was a good Breal though. I enjoyed that one. What was the moral of the story, Kate?
I don't get pregnant,
Don't get pregnant. Okay, cool.
And if you do, pick at least 20 names.
obviously.
That's the kind of thing your
At
anti-pat should be
least.
saying, don't get pregnant. And if you do, pick at least 20 names.
Just have him.
At
Just have him
least.
as a backup.
Also, probably bring some scissors so that you can snip the babies in between. Because you don't want them to get bullied.
Yeah, that would also be a good idea.
This is horrible. All this is horrible.
Have you got the picture in your head?
Yes.
Are you picturing me giving birth right now?
Wow.
It's not nice.
He's at
Oh,
the
It's
thanks.
more
business.
just like
Thanks.
she's vaginally shitting out sausages, you know, a packet of walls.
It's like a minigun.
Yeah.
It's not that
More
quick.
like a slow Nerf
It
gun.
was more like they were just slipping out.
Flump, 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 flump.
No, it was more like ice in a cake.
Oh.
What?
Like it comes out slowly and kind of just
But I mean,
in like a slime.
Wow.
after the 12th baby, it's probably very stretched
You can't
out.
really stop it. You can't just be like, can we stop now? No, you have to give birth to all of them. You can't just leave some of them. You know when you go to Tesco sometimes,
I don't want all of them. Just leave
you
some
know
of
when
them
they're
up there.
scanning your food through and you can see the total going up too high and you're like, I didn't want to spend this much. Can I just stop the shop now? But you can't. You have to wait until they finish, then ring it up, and then you have to pay for it. You know? It's like,
I thought he was
Yes.
going to make a butcher's reference, you know, where they're weighing it and you're like, oh shit, that's too much. Too much.
Well, I hope the listeners enjoy that very
Harrowing.
graphic.
graphic situation in the end.
Yeah. Ali, why don't you give us an outro?
Oh, fuck off, David.
And if you did not enjoy this week's Grim to the Room, well, oh well.
We'll send you some free sausages to make up for it.
No, don't say
We've
that.
got an abundance of them. Kate won't stop. So. Bye.
Let's all say the word crisp. 1, 2, 3. Crisp.
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 Yep.